Hello guys, and here's a basic tutorial on how to make your own Freak Fortress 2 boss. So now, here's your config. There's a CFG file which you would place in add-on source mod config Freak Fortress 2, and there you would specify it in your characters.cfg, which is right in configs Freak Fortress 2. Although in my version it's in data Freak Fortress 2. But anyways, let's start this up. So now here's your name, and that's the name that shows on the screen when the round starts as that boss. In this case, we're gonna use Elsa the Snow Queen. So now class, this is the class that the player spawns at, because it depends on the model. In this case, the model for Elsa is set up with spy animation, so we're gonna make her a spy. So class is 8. Now your model, this is the path to where your model is at. So in my case, it's right here. Here's your command to use this slash instead of the other slash because compatibility reasons. Oops, MDL. The MDL file is what we need. So now your health formula. This is the amount of health your boss gets when the round starts. It could be a constant formula or a health formula that's variable. For example, if you want a constant formula, let's say you want your boss to only get 5,000 health. They'll get a 5,000 health no matter how many players are playing, or you could just change it. For example, you could say 1500 health for every alive player that joins, or you could do the more complex formulas like this. So in this case, this is 450 base health plus players playing times players playing minus 1 to the power of 1.04. And now this part, this is the base health the boss gets when there's only one player because of this. Otherwise you will get an error. Now this is a variable formula, a more complex one than the basic one. So now these two sections don't really matter since this is only used in my Freak Fortress 2 fork, but I'll just fill it in anyway. I'm just telling this that I want to disable damage tripling, and I'm using the new formula system that's been introduced in 1.10.6. Now, the fork for the community that you're in, that you're making bosses for, or if you have your own fork, you'll probably add or remove features, or they'll have some config options that are not present in the public versions. Now your rage damage. That's how much damage your boss has to take before it reaches 100% rage. When your boss rages, it'll activate some kind of ability. So now, I want to put it as 2700. So that's how much rage damage they have to take to get to 100% rage. Now, ever since the epic scout boss that Sarisa made came out a while back, it is also possible to have multiple rages that consume different amounts of rages. For example, you can have one rage that takes up 30% rage, or another one that takes up 50%, and so on. But in this case, we're just using the classic type. Now your max speed, this is this movement speed that your boss starts at. it will slowly increase as your boss health lowers as it takes damage. So in this case I just want to go 330. And now this is to block the voice output for the boss. If they're not supposed to have the Team Fortress 2 voices, you could just set it to 1. Otherwise, if it's related to Team Fortress 2, like your ordinary Freak Fortress Freak from the Freak Show wiki, you can just leave it on. Now Rage Dist, that's the distance that your boss rage will use up. Although, there are some rages that don't use this value at all. Although it is suggested that you do keep it there for, let's say, the default rages that come with this pack. So I'll just put in 500. Say you want to do a basic sentry stun. It will use anything that's 500 hammer units from your boss will be affected. So now your description is the panel that will appear when the player becomes a boss. So now we're gonna put the description here, and in this case I'm gonna be using the full name for Elsa. Which is Queen Elsa of Arendelle. Now this means a new line. When you put this, it means that you put in a new line. So I'm going to put it in front of the movie Frozen. Now, you'll want to give your boss weapons, otherwise you'll just have a civilian boss. So now, we're going to put in the class name, the index, and the show, and one more part, attributes. It is recommended that you keep comments when you do that, so that way you know what value stands for. So we're going to go to the item definition indexes. So now we're going to look for the Spicicle, since that's what I'm going to equip this boss with. So as you see right here, the class name is TF Weapon Knife, and the index number is 649. So for name, you put in TF Weapon Knife, and for class name, for index, you put in 649. Now this is if you want your client to have the weapon being shown to them when they go to third person. And now your attributes, this is the stats that your weapon gets. You could see a full list here. optf2.com item attributes. So in this case I wanted to freeze on backstab. Whoops. 347 1. So 347 1.0. Now I want it to be a silent backstab too. So 156 1.0. Now I want her to get a little fire resistance. So we're gonna use value 60. So this is an inverted percentage, meaning that decimal values means more, while whole values, even with the decimal, means the reverse. So in this case, I'm gonna give it a 50% fire damage resistance. 0.5 as a it means 50% more resistance. So now this is your basic weapon. You can add as many weapons as you like. So now you'll want to put in some form of mobility ability. Not necessarily needed, but let's go put in your basics. Weight down. I use dynamic defaults personally. I just prefer it over the stock ones. So we're gonna use dynamic weight down. Most abilities will have some form of documentation telling you how to use it. So this is your first ability right there. And it'll tell you, like example, what each valley does. So now I'm gonna put another one. Since this is a spy knife, I want the damage to be controlled because by default Freak Fortress 2 puts a 2 capture rate bonus and 3 triple damage. And this is something I do not want in this weapon in this case. So let me open up my pre-made config. So you see right there? Now here is one that I already did with the attributes set up. So if you're using dynamic melee management for a melee weapon, this part becomes redundant. So you can just leave this blank, as this will take over. Now this is pretty useful when you don't want the damage bonus to be applied automatically. You just want to use your own. So I'm gonna put a little more. So in this case I'm gonna put 2 1.5. That's a 50% damage bonus. This is a standard percentage. So now you have your basic 2 abilities. Here's a third ability that I'm using, and that is so when the boss falls into pits, she can go back to a random player or spawn. Since in this one I'm intentionally not putting a super jump, but instead she will have the ability to summon a minion for every X seconds. So now you have your basic abilities right there. So now I'm gonna put on my summon ability. Alright. So like I said, many abilities will have their usage documented and how to set it up properly. In this case, this is going to be used as a summon. I'm going to make it take 5 seconds to charge. Cooldown is every minute. It will have a sound when they spawn. In this case I'm going to just put 1 since I'm only going to summon Olaf the snowman. No overprotection. I mean I could, but you know. Maybe I'll put in 3 seconds of Uber just to make it fair. Now the rage cost is gonna be 15% rage. Notification alert. Yes. I'm gonna use a custom model, so I'm gonna change it to a different one. So now I'm gonna go for Olaf's config, which is right here. So now I'm gonna get his model right here. So now this is a scout, so I'm gonna keep it into 1. Weapon mode and have it hold the candy cane. So I'm gonna put a TF weapon bat, and the index is 317. I'm not gonna change attributes, so I'm just gonna do this. Only with 75% damage bonus and 68 minus 2, meaning that the minion cannot capture the point. No accessories, so that's not needed. I'm gonna have it get 300 health per player alive. I'm gonna have it spawn instead of being summoned right there. This is gonna block the voice. This one could get no health. Spawn conditions, that's if they get any buffs or anything. Not needed. I'm gonna restrict it so that the minion has to be defeated before it could be added. And no, I'm gonna keep the minion alive even if the main boss gets defeated. Scale, alright, so that doesn't matter much. These arc values, they're all about. So I'm gonna scale it to something smaller, like 0.5. So this isn't really that big. Actually 0.7. And the move type is walk in my case. This is redundant, so I'm not using that. This is because I want the weapon to show. And I don't want the health to be overheal, so that's set to 1. And so now you have it there. This is gonna be a reload ability. Actually, no. There's gonna be a standard Altifire ability. So I'm gonna change it to ability 4 because that's the next available ability. Now let's give it a basic rage. Even though the final version of this one will have a custom rage, let's just use one that we're all familiar with. Let's just give it maybe a basic sentry stun and a basic stun. So I mean, most new people tend to use stun rages. I mean, not a lot of people are a fan of it neither. But as I said, the final one, you could use your own custom abilities that you make. Or sub plugins like this one, there's a custom ability. So let's say you want to give it a basic stun. Although in the final version, this will have a much different range. So, name. Whoops. Let's say you want 5 seconds of stun. So now you have your basic rage. Now, whether your boss is to have sounds or not, that's up to you. So now let's get to the most important ones, the sound portions. Do I mainly use myself? There's your path to the sound. Since I'm using a shared folder for the sounds, I'm just putting a random value. But this is the duration that the song lasts until it loops itself. So now there's your begin sound. This is the sound that it plays when basically the catchphrase that they say when, let's say with Saxon Hale, he'll say like something like this.
Let's get this over with. There's a white shark waiting for me in my office. Let's get this over with. There's a white shark waiting for me in my office.
You can have as many sounds as you want. You can also, for example, like this.
Welcome to the tutorial level. What's the matter, girls? Don't you want to live forever?
It's the round start taunt. Now for a hit, that's when they kill a player. So for example, he will say something like,
You fought like a woman.
Sound hit is when you kill a player. There's also another version where it says sound kill and then the class name. For example, sound kill scout, sound killed soldier, sound killed pyro, sound kill demoman, sound kill heavy, sound kill engineer, sound kill medic, sound kill sniper, and sound kill spy. And this one has sounds for each class. For example,
Taste the explosive power of my fists. Reading books won't win your fights. Fists do.
there's just a reference for Saxon Hale, who has his sounds. But in my boss, they won't be using them. But this is just reference.
Less building, more fighting. Are you really the strongest man on your team? You may be fast, but you can't outrun my fist. I eat spy crumbs for breakfast.
And there's also sound kill buildable. That's when the boss destroys a sentry or any buildable in general. And the example for Saxon Hale, he has it.
Property damage!
There's also sound case spree. That's when your boss is in a killing spree. Now here's another boss that uses those sounds. For example, let's try the female sniper.
That one's for me. That's how we do it in the bush. Sniping's a good job, mate.
The sounds that play. So now there's sound win, and that's when your boss wins. Since I still don't have the sounds ready yet, but I know what to name them. But here's another reference sound. Let's try. When I used to make the Fem Scout and the Female Heavy, I had their own section, sounds divided in folders. So in this case I have the wind sounds for Female Scout.
Woo-hoo-hoo! Woo-hoo-hoo! I don't know who to thank first. Oh, I know. Me. Woo-hoo-hoo! Oh, yeah! Are you even trying?
And now sound fail is when the boss loses a round but is still alive. Whereas sound death is when the boss is killed. Now sound ability, if you not define a slot, that's the sound it plays when they normally rage. But if you want to define it for a slot charge type ability, you just put slot whatever number is, and then you put the slot number it's supposed to be. Sound BGM, that's your background music that plays. In this case I'm going to be using Let It Go as a background theme, but I'm using the Tombstone version. So you'll be hearing something like this.
Me anyway. It's funny how some distance makes everything seem small, and the fears that once controlled me can't get to me at all. It's time to see what I can do to toss the limits and break through. No right, no wrong, no rules for me. I'm free. Let it go, let it go. I want with the wind.
Anyways, this is your model download section. This is where you define a model that's gonna download, assuming you have all the files there. In the public version, you'll have to put in the FAI file. And now this is your mat download section. If the materials have both a VMT and VTF file, you put them here. Otherwise, you just put in the download section. So we're gonna do the stat for Elsa's materials. In this case, as you see right there, this is going to the download section. So it's this. So now these are the ones that go to the mat download section. The other ones are going to go into the download section. So now I'm going to put in Elsa's material folder, which is the case. You can just take out the suffix for the file type, so we're not needing that since that will automatically do that. So now we can do the same here. So now, this is pretty much a basic tutorial on how to make a simple Freak Fortress 2 config. So now just make sure that there's no errors in your config and make sure that it works properly. Make sure you test it on your development server or whatever server you have before you release it, and if everything looks good to go, you could just release it. So now I'm going to be doing some more further editing. As I said, Elsa has a couple of custom abilities, and so the stun one is not really the rage that she's getting when she's completed. But this is basically this basic guide on how to set up a config file for Freak Fortress 2 boss. I'm just making sure I didn't forget to put Elsa's 5 file. You only have to add this if it does in fact have a 5 file. Make sure the number sequence is in order, because any number breaks and you'll have it spitting out errors. So once again, make sure your config doesn't have any mistakes like excess quotation marks or an open bracket, because all of that could prevent your boss from working correctly. So make sure that's in check. But anyways, thank you for watching, and that is how you make a config for Freak Fortress 2 for making bosses.